Welcome to episode 9 of the Truth Be Told podcast. I'm Xavier and I'm here with
Julian Burchett.
And today we're going to be diving into Julian's testimony of coming from an atheist to Christ. Do you want to get started by telling us kind of what made you an atheist in the first place?
I definitely experienced a lot of depressive episodes through life, and it kind of felt like God was not on my side with a lot of that. And, a lot of Christians will be like, why isn't he helping me? Why isn't it going the way that I want it to? And they selectively choose what they want to hear from Christ.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was doing. I was selectively hearing, like, he was telling me to change, and I'm sitting there, I don't want to change. I want you to tell me exactly what I want to hear.
So pretty much that made you just come to be like, is there even anyone out here? Because they're not giving me
Definitely.
what I want.
Yeah, I was definitely going through a depressive episode, and I wasn't thinking like, hey, he's giving me these challenges so I can better myself. I was thinking more of why is he giving me these challenges?
Blame. Yeah, that happens so often because so many people are just like, well, if God really loved us, then why would he put us in this situation? They don't realize in the moment that he's doing it to test you, because if you don't know what it feels like to go through a storm, how are you going to survive one?
Yeah, definitely.
That's definitely how I like to think about that. But if that kind of made you become one, what was it that really allowed you to open your eyes to other things? Were you searching for evidence of something? Did you just feel like, oh, this is pointless if there's nothing?
I mean, there was definitely a lot of factors. Funnily enough and ironically enough, do you know who David Goggins is?
Yeah.
I saw a video of his and I was like, you know what? I'm not where I want to be in life. Let me start making a change. And I started going to like gyms. I started hanging out and surrounding myself with people that kind of endorsed that mindset upon me. And they started challenging my beliefs. And over time, it kind of like crumbled it down to what do I really believe? And then I started exploring that more.
And then you kind of just realized, like,
yeah, it's
I
like
really
I'm just kind of following this. I don't know why I'm following it.
I don't really believe anything. I don't like God at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this
I was
to
mad
separate myself from
I was
him.
mad and I wasn't really sure why. And then, at the end of the day, that's what it was. I was not sure why I was mad, but I was just mad.
Because which hatred doesn't come from God, that comes from the world, because the world teaches us it's like hate whatever isn't on your side. They pin races against each other. They pin male and female against each other. All the world wants us to do is to hate everything else so that we get alone and trapped and don't find a way out.
Definitely.
Because I bet you it was a whole lot harder for you trying to figure out life until you started hanging out with people because of David Goggins and trying to make yourself better.
Yeah, definitely. When I started hanging around those people, it kind of just fell in motion, basically. Momentum carried itself, and now I'm here.
Were there any events or anything? Like, was there anything that anyone did for you that made you be like, maybe a Christian, or just maybe anyone that was like, maybe there is something out there if it makes someone this nice of a person?
Multiple points throughout my life I've experienced that. When my mother passed away, we had the most people at her funeral that the funeral home had ever seen. It was something like 400 people. And that was something definitely, that I had so much people surrounding me and comforting me. That was making me think that, hey, this can't just be whatever else. Exploring scientifically into the universe, I mean, we're at a perfect position in the universe where we're just alive.
Yeah.
I don't think that random chance can cause that.
Oh, yeah, it's like a 0.0000.
Yeah, and people say that, and it's just like, it takes more faith to believe that than it does to believe in God.
It does. And science pretty much backs up religion.
Yeah.
Like, even the Big Bang Theory, people don't realize this, but it says in Genesis that, like, God brought light. So, like, the Big Bang, like they describe it, it didn't come from, oh, this atom or this just expanded and then created you. We're way too complex for that.
Definitely. I mean, all of us being unique with our genealogy and our DNA, there's no way that just happens by chance.
And so there was a light that was brought, but that light was from God creating everything. Yeah. And I think that's where we get so twisted, is we're always looking to disprove the Bible and disprove everything in it instead of reading it as a child, basically. That's how I really grow in, through reading the Bible, is because when I read it like a kid again, it makes me come to realize, oh, God really did this like this, and it's caused everything else to work out perfectly. Yeah. But a lot of times I'll hear people who are like Muslim or atheist or anything else, they'll just be like, well, flip to Leviticus and it talks about slaves right here. Yeah. That's all they do. They have these same 3 verses memorized, and it's like pound, pound, pound. They won't accept that maybe it was just a worse time period, and that was easier for Christians to do and not get persecuted than.
That's definitely a factor, and a lot of them will just get those verses out of context. I was
Mm-hmm.
subject to that when I was in that realm of atheism and nihilist
Mm-hmm.
beliefs.
Oh, definitely, because the Bible, I mean, it is easy. If you want to sit there and pick and pry through the Bible and pull one verse out and
Yeah.
forget all the other ones around it, you can, and you can make God look like this horrible person.
Yes,
But
definitely.
when you genuinely read the Bible and read it in context and understand the time period, that's why a lot of ministers have to go through courses on theology and stuff, is because if you don't know why God said it at that certain time, it can be confusing. Like if God would have said, treat your slaves well in the 18 or 1700s, then it's a little different than if he did it in however many BC.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about context and wanting to learn and wanting to know the truth. Because for me, and I talked about this on the podcast with Amari today, we're not called to have blind faith through Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are thousands of religions in the world. If you
Yeah.
just want to have blind faith, you can shut your eyes, point at one, and say, I'm going to believe that. We should look at the evidence of everything and come to a conclusion which one is more likely.
Yeah, definitely. And then, just use conclusive evidence from there.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is Christianity.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. It's a historical. Well, you have three major religions.
Yeah, your Abrahamic religions.
Mm-hmm. You have Jewish people.
Yeah. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Islam,
yeah.
Yes. And if you go through them, you're like, okay, we know it's a historical fact that Jesus lived and died.
Yes, because it kind of shows up in the Quran. It shows up in all of those as well.
And in the Quran, it says that Jesus lived, but it says that he didn't die. It says that instead people were fooled into thinking that Jesus died. Well, why would God deceive everyone in the world and send them to hell? So check that off. That's not
yeah,
true.
Definitely.
And then you go to Judaism, and they believe that Jesus is just a failed Messiah. He didn't live up to their standards.
Yeah.
He rose on the third day.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who claims to be God and tells you, I will rise again from death 3 days later, and does it, I don't know about you, but I'm believing 100% that's God. There is no possible way that you could convince me that that isn't God if they do that.
Yeah.
And claim that.
Definitely.
So, it's pretty much what I'm getting is that you went from atheism, or what do you call it? Nihilism to Christianity through evidence, and then to do better, motivation.
Yeah, motivation.
Was it ever through love?
I mean, love for Jesus Christ, yes, but not love for like another person or anything.
Mm-hmm. Like there wasn't anyone specifically who just straight up showed you this is how everything's laid out.
I kind of just forced myself into it, and then the ball started rolling, like I said.
Was there anyone who tried to show you, and maybe back in the day, because you were an atheist at the time, you just kind of shoved it away and didn't want to hear it?
I'm going to say there's probably hundreds of people that did that. And like tons of people kept trying to help me, and at the time I was a lot more arrogant and ignorant as a younger younger male.
Yeah. That's a lot of times when our testosterone starts kicking
it's
up,
just
and
like, hey,
that
I don't want to believe that. And I think that my parents believing it too, kind of in that rebellious stage, made me just naturally not want to do it.
Oh, so your parents were actually atheists too?
No, my parents were Christian. My mom's a Catholic and my dad's an Episcopalian.
So you were just straight up rebelling against them, and that's what started it?
It's a mixture. I mean, like I said, there's definitely a lot of anger there, and that anger kind of fueled in. And I kind of feel like to an extent I was manipulated into believing nihilism. And like I said, I still carry over a little bit of the ideals, but not all of them.
Yeah.
That's why I don't affiliate with a specific branch of Christianity.
Are there any, like, I know you were mentioning it a little bit before, but what exactly are the things that you still believe from it?
Definitely, like, I'm not going to say we don't have predetermined meaning, but I believe to an extent that we can find more meaning than Christ has set out for us throughout life. Like, you can find meaning to be a priest. You can find meaning to follow Christ every day. And you can do more than he's kind of set out for you.
So, okay. I want to challenge that a little bit, not like challenge in terms of an argument. The way that I see it is we know that God is all-knowing. He knows everything that we do, and he knows every possible outcome of every situation. But he does not have our lives predetermined for us, as you said, right? But in a sense, he does have a plan for us. And if we were to follow that plan to a T, I believe that is the best we could possibly live.
Oh yeah, 10,000%. But what I'm more or less saying is that there's other options that he purposely puts in there that we can kind of take along that route.
Like, okay, so let's say there's 50 different paths. We can go down the wrong path, but still find the end.
Definitely, yes.
Yes, I believe that too, because if that weren't the case, none of us would ever sin, right?
Yeah.
Once you sin, you've strayed away from the path. You've strayed away from what God has intended for you to do. And a lot of people do end up finding Christ in their later years instead of earlier on in life.
Yeah.
Like, kids who are bold about their faith is not a common thing. Like, there are not many kids who will go out and just say, God, I give my life to you before I ever start drinking, smoking, cussing, any of these things.
Definitely.
Because we're creatures of excitement. We want to go out and have fun and give in to worldly temptations. But I think the biggest thing for me, and the reason I started this podcast, is tomorrow isn't promised. We have got to get right while we still can. Like, there are too many kids in our grade who just have so much hate and anger in their hearts.
Yeah.
Because of whatever reason. They may be like you, or they were either rebelling or feel like God is like hitting them where it hurts. It may be through heartbreaks. It may be through getting cheated on. It may be through maybe they did drugs or drank a few times and then they got hooked on it, and then now they're angry that they can't get away from it, but that just causes them to keep doing it. It could really be anything, but we have to come to Jesus, because if we don't, we'll never find the truth. 10,000%. We'll just be covered up by lies.
Yeah.
A big thing for me is like surrounding yourself by light. It's easy, and we actually mentioned this at Youth Revival this past week at my church. It's easy for your light to shine in a fully lit place, but it's hard to allow your light to shine in darkness.
Oh yeah.
Because when you do, everyone sees it. Like, everyone is judging you. Everyone's hating on you. Even since I started this podcast, Xander will tell me that he walked in Piggly Wiggly, which was my old job the other day, and they were just straight up like, oh, it isn't the minister, like making jokes about it and stuff like that. And I understand people are going to do that because Jesus tells us the world hated him, they're going to hate us. But it is also mentally challenging in a sense where I feel like a lot of people would give up after that.
Definitely. Peer pressure, stuff like that.
Because that's really what shapes us, is our society and the people we're around. That's why
1000%.
If you hang out in darkness every day, it's hard to be the light because you're never getting replenished.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm a strong believer that if you listen to depressing music every day, you're bound to get depressed, or if you do this every day, you're bound to do this.
Yeah, we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so like against secular music and stuff like that, is because it just desensitizes you to everything.
Oh, 10,000%.
If I'm sitting there listening to Young Boy or something in my ears constantly, volume turned all the way up, I may just be listening to it for the beat. But if I'm constantly hearing about drugs and guns and killing people and women constantly, I'm not going to be as sensitive to those things as a normal person would. If I see a girl twerking, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's wrong. I'm going to be like, oh, that's normal. If I see people shooting each other at like 17 years old, I'm going to be like, I ain't worried about that. That happens all the time. Even though it really doesn't, we've shaped our brains into believing that.
Conditioning, yeah.
Because that's truly all that we are, as creatures of habit. And that's why if you, instead of doing those bad habits, turn to good habits, life becomes 20 times
Which
easier.
is a lot harder to do good things than bad things because he lets us have that free will.
Yeah, and you don't enjoy them as much at first. Like, I know when you first start reading your Bible, like a lot of people watching this, maybe you want to pick up your Bible and start reading, but when you read it, you feel like, what's the point in this? I'm bored out of my mind. I'm one page in. Even if you just read one page a day, you'll start to want to learn more and more, because the Bible is really interesting. You just don't know about it because you never give it the time of day.
That too.
If you got to start at one verse, 2 verses, 1 chapter, get in the habit of reading it, and then eventually your brain's going to be like, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important to read at your own pace. If you just, in my opinion, if you try to force yourself to read a chapter, you're going to grow to hate it. You're not going to enjoy it. You read at whatever pace you want to. It's not a failure if you read 1 verse a day and then 3 chapters tomorrow.
Yeah. And a lot of times people do the complete opposite. They'll start reading it and they're like, oh, I want to read as much as possible. And they'll read 10 pages and they'll completely forget about it because they didn't enjoy those 10 pages.
Yeah.
So the next day they don't do it, and the next day they don't, and the next day they don't.
Yeah. Which a lot of new Christians, they kind of forget they have to pray before reading the Bible as well. It's really important to, pray to God and ask for the interpretation and the wisdom during reading it. And a lot of the new ones don't do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that when I started because I didn't know I needed to.
I don't always do it because, especially since I'm a minister now, like I'm not always reading the Bible for my own self, and that's a problem. I need to be 100% committed to reading it for myself and then reading it to teach others. But a lot of times I'll get caught up in, I'm just reading it to understand it. God's kind of already broken it down for me a little bit to where I understand the key message of it and how to preach it to others. Like, I gave my first ever sermon this Sunday.
I saw that.
Oh, you saw it? A few people told me, like even Xander, we're twins. We do not tell each other positive things. He straight up told me, this is my favorite sermon I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it was a good sermon. I really enjoyed listening to it. I didn't listen to it all completely because I watched it at like 9 o'clock. But I watched a lot of it, and I think I'm gonna say 80% of it.
Yeah, and it's like God has, and I think that's the reason He's calling me to do this podcast too. He speaks to me in a way where I'm able to. It doesn't matter who I'm sitting with, the age. It doesn't matter anything. I'm able to connect with them.
Definitely. That's just something that I think also happens through Christianity. It's something magnificent that happens.
Yeah, because we're called to love everyone. If we're truly loving everyone, we should tolerate anything with anybody. We shouldn't accept it all the time.
Definitely. That's something that a lot of Christians struggle with. Like, you see Christians constantly, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of Christians will refuse to let a gay person in the church. And it's just like, you need to let them in there so they can learn that what they're doing is wrong. And they need to try to overcome that.
And you got to show them love. That's a big thing. Some people will let them in, and then they're just.
It's like you brought up in your sermon. When people are talking about people at church, which is a really big problem,
it pushes them away.
It's a lot of people suffer with. It pushes them away, and then it gives them a bad taste about Christianity.
See all those sticky notes on the table over there?
Yeah.
A few of them, which I know you said you didn't finish the sermon, but at the end, I put the cross at the front, and I said, write down anything that's on your heart, that God's putting on your heart, that you're struggling with, that's separating you from Him, any people in your life. At least 5 of those sticky notes say hurt from the church.
I could definitely understand that. I can't speak for Concord, but from what I've heard, it's a good church.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely different. It's more of a loving environment, but there are still people in it, just like with any aspect of life, that are going to be more hostile and just like drama. Women naturally like drama. So if you put a whole bunch of middle-aged women in an area together, there's going to be a little more drama. But that's when we have to strive to grow in our relationship with Jesus every day, because if we really are trying to do that, then the drama in our lives will begin to go away.
Definitely. I heard an amazing quote from one of my favorite rappers, J. Cole, and he said that comparison is the friend of depression. That's a very true quote. When you're comparing yourself to other people constantly, you're naturally going to get sadder. You're going to, why am I this way? Why am I not that way? Which is something that we struggle with a lot today, and I think that kind of brings in that issue that you're talking about with the church community.
Because, and I talked about that for like a whole 10 minutes.
They're comparing themselves to like Matthew or Luke or somebody else, and like, why can't I be, saints like these people, or why can't I be as good as them,
or why can't God reveal Himself to me?
Yeah.
It's because maybe God wants you to have that faith in Him. It's really easy to have faith when you see something. Like, I don't have to have faith that cap is sitting on that table. I know that cap is sitting there. If God didn't want you to have faith in Him, He would just show Himself to every single person on this earth.
Definitely.
But we have to have faith.
He gives you that free choice, that free will, which is really something unique that I find magnificent about Christianity. Like, you have all of these choices, and at the end of the day, it's up to you. If He wanted you to follow Him, He'd make it where that's His only choice, or that's your only choice.
Yeah. He showed His love by giving us free will, knowing the sacrifice that He would have to make.
Definitely.
When we disobeyed. And I think that's just is what causes us to love God so much, when we truly come to understand what He did for us, because He did something for us that pretty much no one else on this earth will ever do for us.
Yeah, definitely.
There are not many people on this earth who would sacrifice their own life, let alone their son's life or their daughter's life. Like, in the Bible it says that's like the greatest thing to do, because it's truly, it's just so honorable to see that, is to see someone, especially like a lot of Christians will be like, oh, I'll sacrifice my life for my kids or something, but they don't have that same type of love for everyone like we're called to have.
Definitely. That's 100% true. I agree. 10,000.
Yeah, the second commandment says that all of them are summed up in this one: love your neighbor as yourself.
It's a really important commandment that we don't remember.
Because lying goes away. If you love someone enough, you won't lie to them.
Yeah.
You would never steal from anyone you love. You'd never kill anyone you love. You never speak blasphemy against someone you truly love. Everything is summed up in just love. That's why God is love, and we have to allow him to come into our hearts so that we can love everyone else.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And just like from my own personal testimony, it's like there's such a difference in my life when I truly gave everything over to God, in terms of how quick I was to anger. Not saying that I was an angry person before I came to know Jesus, but with sports or something. I'm a competitive person, so anytime we just be playing soccer during soccer practice and someone would constantly keep messing up and causing us to lose, I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Just get off the field. I can do better without you. And ever since I've grown in my relationship with God, I haven't even been compelled to do that.
Yeah.
Because I love them enough that I know, me personally, I wouldn't want someone talking to me like that. So why am I going to talk to someone else like that?
Yeah, definitely. It's really important not to talk to other people like that. I feel like the moment you start doing that, you're inviting that toxicity into your life, that destructive, I don't want to say habit, but that's what it is, a habit.
Yeah, because once you start doing it, you get used to it, and you're like, oh, this ain't nothing special, and then you just keep doing it.
Dude, you keep doing it. It's like, oh, nobody's really getting on to me or anything, but you're going to pay for it one day.
Yeah, unless you repent and turn away from it. And that's what we talked about on this morning's podcast, is like, what is repentance? Because a lot of people think that it's just like praying to God and saying, God forgive me, God forgive me. Slap someone in the face, forgive me. That's it. No, you have to actually want to turn away from those things and turn towards God. That's why when you're baptized, you go under the water and then you raise up as a new person.
Yes.
You're supposed to come out as a new person through your love of Jesus. You're not truly saved if you're the same before and after getting saved. Then you need to look in the mirror and truly ask yourself, did I really get saved, or was I just doing it for somebody else?
That's true.
Because a lot of times we fall into that. I know when I was younger, I got saved because I thought it would make my grandma happy because everyone else got up there and got saved.
Which a lot of people rush it. I mean, you've got your whole life.
Which, once saved, always saved is the truth. That's what we're told throughout the Bible. But it all just comes down to, were you truly saved in the first place?
Yeah, definitely.
Someone's even asked me that before. They were like, well, Xavier, I was a Christian when I was young. I got baptized at like 7. But now, I don't believe in God. Am I going to heaven? I was like, no, because if you truly got saved, you know 100% for a fact that there is a God out there and that he loves you and you love him back. The ability to just turn away from him and say you don't even exist after you see all this evidence every day, just proves how complex we are in terms of our misunderstanding. He was like, well, I think I'm a decent person. Do you think I'm going to hell? I was like, I also believe you're a decent person, but also, have you ever messed up before in your life? Have you ever sinned? He was like, well, yeah, everyone does. Okay, so maybe you just told an innocent lie one time, or you thought it was innocent, but that caused someone else to tell someone else that and tell someone else that, and then that caused someone to run to the house, and then maybe they got in a car crash on the way there. That means that murder is on your hands. So are you quite as innocent when something bad comes from that sin? And that really helped them to understand, okay, that's why all sin is the same. Because all sin leads to bad outcomes.
Definitely.
And it was just like, how can you expect to go to heaven and be with God if you don't even believe there is a God?
Definitely. It's just like, I want the reward, but I don't want to do the work to get the reward.
And how can you experience a reward if you don't even believe in the reward? Like,
Exactly.
if I don't believe that that cap is an actual cap, how can I expect to go put it on my head? Like,
Which, yeah, that's something else that a lot of people want. They want to get all these rewards and all these benefits of Christianity. They want this positive relationship with God, but they won't put in the work to have that positive relationship with God. Something important is you have to make sacrifices. I mean, I know before I was exploring more into my Christian beliefs, I swore a lot. Like, I was swearing almost every sentence. And I'm not going to say I've completely gotten rid of it. Like, there's still the thoughts there, which it's thoughts, it's not actions, but it's still bad. But I don't verbally do it nearly as much, if ever.
Yeah. For me, I'm that kid that doesn't drink, smoke, cuss, anything.
Which I don't do any of it either. So
yeah. And through that, a lot of people are like, "Why? Like, what's the point? Cussing in itself isn't wrong unless you're cursing at someone. Drinking in itself isn't bad unless you're getting drunk. Smoking in itself isn't bad unless you're getting high or getting addicted to the nicotine." And my reason for it is, why would I put myself in a situation that would cause me to be tempted to sin?
Exactly.
If I have no reason to do it. If I don't have a thought of drinking right now, why would I take a sip to make myself start thinking about drinking?
Yeah.
Why would I take a hit of the vape to where I start wanting the vape? There's just no reason for it. There are no actual benefits of drinking, smoking, or cussing.
I agree, other than, that little moment of enjoyment, which will get much longer, like your whole life if you follow Christ.
And that little moment of enjoyment always ends up with a bad consequence the next morning, usually.
Yeah, definitely. But you're just kind of making up for it. I kind of think in a weird way that's his way of telling us, hey, don't do that.
Yeah, it is.
It's just like, don't do that.
He wants us to know that we have permanent enjoyment in him.
Exactly.
It never wavers.
You get maybe 6 hours maximum of enjoyment from, let's say, smoking some weed.
And then you get about 4 or 5 hours of bad consequences from it.
Exactly.
So it always balances each other out. But God's never balanced out by evil. He's not,
never. He always overcomes
perfection and joy. And that's what a lot of Christians don't understand. God's already won. Him versus the devil, he's already won.
Every time.
All that he wants us to do is to accept him so that we can also win.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my next sermon.
It'll be a good one.
My next sermon.
It'll be a good one.
I'm hoping so. It's kind of hard because I poured everything into this sermon. Like, everything that God's ever put on my heart, I just threw it in there.
Which I think that's what makes a priest a good priest, or someone that gives sermons a good sermon.
Is not preparing for the future, instead just throwing it all out there, knowing it.
Well, when you make yourself vulnerable, that allows other people to say, "Hey, whoa, nobody else does that."
Yeah.
Which it'll definitely help people connect, because you're in that vulnerability state. You're kind of just putting it all on the line. It's kind of like giving them the gun with all the ammo in it and saying, "Hey, here I am.
Don't shoot me.
Don't shoot me. Here I am." And you're giving them this, this faith in them that they won't do anything, and it kind of establishes an immediate connection on top of what you're already getting from giving the sermon.
Yeah, I think I really connect with that, and I never really thought about it like that, is because a lot of preachers or priests, they're scared to admit what they've done in their past because they don't want people in the church to look at them as these horrible people and maybe not listen to them. But for me personally, any pastor that I've ever heard talk about their past and talk about how they were before Jesus and after Jesus, it really just helps me grow in my relationship with God, because it's like, whoa, if he could change that person that had all these sins, I'm not even that bad in terms of my sin. Like, obviously we're all bad, but it's like he turned Saul into Paul in the Bible. He went from killing Christians to being a Christian, spreading God's word. If he can change Saul, what makes you think that he can't get rid of your cussing problem or your drinking problem or your addiction to porn? Like, all these things can go away.
Oh, a really good story about that is the story of Job. That's a really good story that gives a good example of, hey, just keep trusting him and eventually it's going to pay off. Job's getting these warts and these ulcers on his body, all over his body, and everything's, he's losing his cattle, he's losing his children. I'm pretty sure he lost his wife. And then,
he kept his faith the whole time.
And then eventually he goes, okay, come down. Why are you doing this to me? And then God's like, you know what, dude? I'm just going to give you 2 times of everything you had. We'll make up for it. And he got 2 times of everything he had.
And then he also got to go to heaven afterwards for that faith.
Yes, and a lot of people will look at that and say, "Hey, I want 2 times of everything, but I don't want to
But
go through
they
the
don't want to put
ulcers.
in the
I
work.
don't want to go through the ulcers, losing my children, losing my cattle, losing everything that I've developed up until this point."
Hmm.
So, amidst losing all of that, they lose faith in God, and then they're wondering why they don't get that reward. They're
Hmm.
skipping a fundamental step.
They're wondering why they're depressed at the end of the journey when God only asked them to do one thing, to be
Yes,
happy, and they denied it every single time he offered it.
10,000%.
And that's what you were speaking of earlier, is like truly wanting the reward without putting in the work. That's like we have to pretty much look at God with logic.
Mm-hmm.
How can you expect to get big if you never go to the gym? How can you expect to get in shape to where you can run 10 miles if you never run one? We
Mm-hmm.
can't constantly expect things from God, but then when He asks us to do something about this much compared to what He's doing for us, we're like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'll skip that step.
Just come on, just give me something now. But He's already done enough for us. Like, God
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't owe us anything.
He
He
doesn't.
created us, allowed us to sin, and then gave us a way back to Him. And we still are like, okay, God, come on, show me some more. I don't deserve this. We're just greedy creatures. We
By
really
nature.
are. And it's all by nature because we're in this world full of sin because we chose sin. So many people are like, God, why do you allow cancer to happen if you're such a loving God? God didn't allow that to happen. We wanted that by choosing this world filled with cancer and filled with darkness rather than filled with
Mm-hmm.
light and perfection.
Definitely.
Do you have anything else that you maybe want to talk about your testimony, or
Not really. I mean,
encourage anybody else? Or
I would just say if you're feeling like you want to explore it, definitely reach out to people. It's kind of what I did. I just reached out to people and were like, "Hey, let me start learning slowly about this." I went on TikTok. I remember typing in Bible stories about this or that or whatever I wanted to learn about at that moment,
mm-hmm.
and then I'd watch these little animated shorts, and then I'd go read it and be like, "Okay, so this is what this means. Here's how it applies to my life, and here's what it means in the long term."
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd write a little bit of my notes app on my phone, and then
Yeah.
just kind of skip over it and go back. And if I needed to come back to it, I had that notes app.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a 3-step thing for me.
And I think the big thing for him, especially, is maybe if you were really that confident in your beliefs, be willing to have a conversation with someone about it.
Yeah.
I think it shows weakness in your beliefs if, let's say, you're an atheist and I say, "Why are you an atheist?" And you're just like, "Shut up, you're an idiot." Like,
Which,
dude, that happened to me the other day. I have over 1,000 followers on TikTok now, so I'm able to go on lives with people and talk to them about this stuff.
yeah.
I went on somebody's live and I was like, "So why do you believe in the Big Bang Theory?" I was like, "Well, God did this." "Shut up, you're an idiot." Kick me off the live.
Yeah, kicks you off the live, you're banned from the live
I
immediately.
was like, dude, all I'm trying to do is have a conversation with you, because maybe you could teach me. If you're really that confident in your beliefs, you should want to teach others. But they don't want that. They just want to say, they really just want attention, I feel like. I don't know about you, but were you wanting attention when you do it? Or was it just
No
straight
means.
up?
I was just looking for an answer, and that was at the time the answer that I was happy with.
So you didn't want to ever challenge that answer, pretty much?
Which I had a lot of conversations about it, like a lot of conversations. Anybody that knows me knows that they would try to talk to me about it, and I would have a conversation about it and say, "Well, here's this, here's this."
Mm-hmm.
Which, in a weird way, it's kind of helpful that I had that going on because now I can use it with Christianity. When people are like, "Hey, Christianity's fake," I can pull up lots of Bible stories, lots of verses, lots of accounts that show, "Hey, this is very real."
Mm-hmm. And what caused you to believe?
Which, like I said, it carried over from being a nihilist because I could argue a lot with nihilism, and I was like, why am I using this energy here in something I don't 100% believe when I can transfer it over here
to something that's pretty much more backed up historically by evidence?
Which I would honestly go as far to say that it is backed up by evidence. I saw a TikTok the other day that showed that the population growth, if you were actually accounting for the Bible and like what it says the population growth would be, is historically accurate. Because you have like the line and it goes like this until we discover farming, and then poof, just right up.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this random event of some man planting seeds in the ground, which supposedly took 6,000, 7,000 years. Supposedly, because no humans out of the millions and trillions that were born before that could figure out that planting a seed in the ground would cause this to do that. which he made a really good argument about it. He was like, so you're telling me in 6,000 years they couldn't do that?
Yeah.
Which it makes sense. Also, another argument is, where are all these bodies? If the world has existed for as long as they're saying it has, and there's been human nature as long as they're claiming it has, where are all the skeletons?
And because a lot of times people are like, oh, this dinosaur is 40 million years old.
Yeah.
It talks about dinosaurs in the Bible.
Which we've got skeletal evidence of that, but we don't have skeletal evidence of humans even past, I think it's 1,000 BC. Like, we can't find anything past that.
Yeah. It's because just for some reason humans, it's easier for them to have faith in things like, oh, dinosaurs have been around for that long, a meteor struck the earth, than it is for them to believe in things like the flood, which it's historically proven that there are fish skeletons on top of mountains.
Yeah.
How can that happen if there wasn't ever a flood that allowed the water to get up that high?
They'll tell you it's a flying fish or something like that. I don't know.
They'll bring up the craziest answer to deny God every time. They will find a way, and if they don't find a way, they'll just like, don't worry about it.
Which, I mean, I saw a news article recently that said they found what they believed to be part of the wood from the ark in like the Middle East out there on the top of the mountains, which makes sense. It would be on the top of the mountains, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. If you just really study and look into it, they have found a lot of evidence that proves the Bible is real.
Yeah, definitely.
The Dead Sea Scrolls back it up, so we know that it hasn't been changed over time. The way
we've got, you've got accounts like the Book of Enoch and all of that show they may not be what are considered canon
because
like
they weren't actually inspired by God.
Yeah.
But it's still historical proof of what was going on in that time.
Definitely. And you've got like all these historical accounts, like records and things like that, showing that Jesus was alive. Now, is he the Messiah? Certain Christian branches don't believe that, like Judaism. That's up in the air for certain branches. Most of them agree that he was the Messiah and that he was God's son.
Well, those aren't really Christian branches. They're just more religious branches.
Yeah.
Because Christian actually just means follower of Christ. So if you truly don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah, which is what I was telling you the other day, then you're just straight up not a Christian.
Yeah, you'd be a Jewish person.
Yeah, or I guess
Judas?
a Jew.
Jew? Yeah, I don't know what the plural form of that
A lot of people don't like to say Jew because of the like Holocaust and stuff like that. But yeah, they're just straight up considered Jews. But it's just like people in Islam, they believe that Jesus existed and that he was a prophet. For some reason, they believe that a prophet was more holy than the person who wrote their entire book. I don't know how that correlates.
Not really too sure either.
I've read through the Quran. That's something I will always encourage any Christian on, which I think is something that maybe the reason God tested you through allowing you to be an atheist earlier on in your life. It's because he wants us to grow in our own knowledge of everything else that's out there so that we can defend.
No, I was just about to say that. It's really important for Christians to be like, hey, I need to read the Quran. I need to read whatever else. I don't know any of the actual religious texts, their names at least.
Yeah, I don't know anything else.
I know the Quran, the Bible.
And the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, which is Judaism, which were written by Moses. But the Torah is right. But for some reason, people who believe the Torah don't believe everything that came after it that is also canon. I don't know if it's, I think a lot of Judaism is denial. A lot of Jews don't want to admit that they were the ones who murdered Jesus.
That is one.
Islam, they are just so aggressive. Like, and when I say that, Islam as a religion in itself isn't a peaceful religion at all.
It's not. I mean, they murder women for unveiling their heads. I mean, it's very bad out there.
But there are also some people who believe in Islam that are peaceful. But usually I think it's the West that are peaceful because they don't actually believe in the full Quran and the Daheed and all that stuff that backs up the Quran. They've kind of taken what they believe in and what they're taught and branched off to a more peaceful version, which in a sense is better because in the Quran it just straight up says you can kill any, or not in the Quran, but the Daheed, it says that they can kill anyone who isn't a Muslim. Like they can just go to war with them and kill them. Just because, how can you say God is merciful or merciful and also say that at the same time and say that God said that? It's just man makes so many religions to stray us away from the one true God. It's really sad to see.
Which honestly, I feel like the other religions, not Christianity, because Christianity is historically backed up, are
Mhm.
more of like a coping mechanism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just because they want to believe that something's out there, but they
Yeah.
don't want to admit the truth.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, I don't want to believe this. I'm going to put my own twist on it
Mhm.
so I can get money or I can feel this power or I can feel whatever. And then I'm going to say label it as my own.
Yeah, Muhammad said when he was writing the Quran that he felt demon possessed. Why would God tell you or make you feel demon possessed when he comes over you and gives you his word? Because it's not his word.
Yeah.
And a lot of Muslims like to say, well, the Bible and the Quran are very similar. They're not. One teaches that Jesus is the Son of God and the Messiah. The other one teaches that Jesus was just a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just it comes from a stubbornness of not wanting to believe the truth. So we inspire falsehoods so that we can cope with our own understanding of the world.
That definitely. It's just like each and every person's own understanding. That's kind of the same thing that happened with me in nihilism. I was just like, hey, I'm going to do this. And then I jumped from nihilism to stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
And then stoicism naturally kind of led back into the Christianity. And then I just incorporated the two. So by technical definition, when people ask me, I'm a Stoic Christian.
Mm-hmm. And what was that again?
Stoicism is I can't remember his exact name. I'm not gonna pretend I know it, but he has this boat and it's full of stuff, full of gold. He's a philosopher at the time, full of gold, full of everything else, and then it sinks. He loses everything, kind of like the story of Job, and he grows to realize that at the end of the day, none of that really matters. It's just like what does all this gold matter when I'm not happy in the position that I'm at?
Oh, so pretty much Stoicism is.
It's just dropping the materialistic value. It puts a heavy emphasis on not viewing anything as materialistic. Like I don't like that chair more than that table because I think that chair costs more. They're the same value.
So
to
pretty
me.
much everything in this world is temporary and it doesn't matter. And at the
at the end of the day, all I need to do is focus on my relationship with Christ.
But also, this life, there is a reason for this life, and that's what a lot of people do lose. Is they'll be like, well, once I get set, God put me here because I strayed away from Him. Why, when I get saved, can I not just go straight to heaven?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're put here even after we get saved because we should love everyone else to show them God's love. Like so, there is definitely a purpose in being here. Our purpose is.
I'm not saying there's not. But like an example would be the other day, I work at Walgreens, and there was this homeless dude that came in there, and he had his backpack. And I'm not going to reveal what he looked like or anything like that because I don't want to judge anybody. But he has all this stuff and he's trying to rummage through to get a pack of, I think it was rolls for wrap or whatever for like weed. And I didn't care. It wasn't my business to care because at the end of the day, I can't judge anybody more than I judge myself. So I was like, you know what, man, here you go. And I gave him $60. And I had, I think, $80. So it was my last little bit of money until I got paid for the next week. But at the end of the day, with my Stoic beliefs, I felt that meant more for me to give him that 60 than it did for me to use it on something else like food or something temporary. Because that may have got him a hotel room. That may have got him something to eat that night. It may have given him more faith in God or something like that. I prayed with him after and told him that God's with him. Now, if he goes and tells his friends that or he actually believes that, it's not up to me. I just can hope that at the end of the day, that meant more to him than it did to me.
Yeah. And I believe that's why God calls us to help everyone else.
Yeah.
But also, in a sense, I don't like just giving money to strangers when it's that large of an amount. I like to ask them, what do they need? Because a lot of times they'll take that. You're probably working, so you.
I was working. I was behind the register, and if I could have, if I was in person, I would have been like, "Hey, do you want some McDonald's or something? Do you want me to go get you, a book bag, or do you need me to get you a tent or something like that? I can do all that for you."
Because I always love. I follow a lot of YouTubers that give money to homeless people, and I know it's not always right to just have the camera in their face and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Which I didn't record it or anything.
Yeah.
I personally believe that it's not that cool to record it. Because then you're not recording it for the actual action, you're recording it for the praise that comes with the action.
Well, some people do it because that's their way of making money to provide.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And when you're doing that, and when you get their consent to do it, and you let them know why, then that's okay. But there are a lot of people who are just walk up, giving $10,000.
Yeah, just you got your phone, out, you're like, "Hello," you right in their face, and you're just like,
just pull $10,000 out. It'll look good in the title.
They got warts all over their face. You hand them 10,000, and then you run back and snatch it.
Hand them the money. So, how'd that $10,000 look? Like, no, you're supposed to do for them what they actually need. Spend that $10,000 to buy them a car that they can live in. Like
something like that, definitely.
Don't just hand a drug addict $10,000 and say that you're helping them. No, you're providing for their hurt.
Exactly.
You should want what's good for them, not what's easy for you and benefits you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
because that falls into us a lot of the times. Like people who donate the most money to churches or donate the most people to stuff, they always want their name to be at the top.
That's kind of like I was saying. That's the fundamental aspect of Stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like at the end of the day, my name at the top doesn't matter. I'm doing what I can,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the day, if God gives me a $10 million home, what's that $10 million home if I don't have a relationship with Him?
Mm-hmm.
What's the $50,000 Ford Ranger 2023 if I'm not happy with it or something?
Yeah.
Or what's having the brand new iPhone 13 matter if I'm not having that relationship with Him? Because at the end of the day, He's the one that gives me it.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that me working a 40-hour shift that week is what got it.
And He could take it away tomorrow.
Exactly. I mean, my phone might break down, say that I have a water in it or something, and I
Mm-hmm.
can never fix it. And then I'm like, what am I going to do?
Or it could just be something as simple as like, if I gave you $2 million right now, you'd be happy, right?
Yes, happy, but then.
But if I told you, if I give you $2 million, but you can't wake up in the morning, would you take it? No.
No, definitely not.
Because tomorrow is more valuable than $2 million.
Definitely.
So why don't we live every day taking advantage of it as if that day was worth that $2 million?
I agree.
Too often we get caught up in, oh, I'm just here. I don't want to be here. Be grateful that you're here and spend that time to make progress with God and those around you through God.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've kind of made my goal.
I agree 100% with that.
But I think that wraps it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching episode 9 of the Truth Be Told podcast. I can't believe we're already on episode 9.
And I've watched like everyone up until 7, I think, or 6.
Well, I'm posting 8 today.
So it'd be 6 because I didn't watch 7 yet.
Yeah.